The phone rang again, third time in an hour. I stared at it from my spot on the couch, watching the screen light up with Winter's name. My hands wouldn't stop trembling long enough to answer, and honestly, what was I supposed to say? "Hey sis, sorry I missed dinner again. But there's this old thing living in the ocean that wants me to feed it human beings." The ringing stopped, started again 30 seconds later. "Answer it," the voice whispered, cold and patient in the back of my skull. "Tell her you're coming over. The children would be so easy to—" "No." I said it out loud, gripping my head with both hands. "Not them. Never them." The thing's laughter felt like ice water in my veins. "Your resistance grows weaker each day, Shirley. Soon you won't have a choice." Through my apartment window, the ocean stretched out black and endless. Somewhere down there, in depths that shouldn't exist, thousands of bodies floated in that bright cave. Their faces came back to me every time I closed my eyes, frozen in terror, hanging in the air like some twisted museum display. The creature had shown me its collection with pride, explaining how it kept each mind at the moment of greatest fear. My fishing gear sat in the corner, nets and tackle boxes gathering dust. 3 weeks since the accident. 3 weeks since my crew pulled me out of the water more dead than alive. 3 weeks since I made a deal I didn't understand with something that should have stayed buried in the deep. The phone buzzed with a text. "Shirley, I'm worried. Please call me back. Winter." I grabbed the phone, then put it back down. How could I explain that every conversation felt like walking through a minefield? That the voice got louder when I was around people I cared about, whispering suggestions that made my stomach churn? "She sounds concerned," the thing purred. "Perhaps she needs comfort. You could invite her over. Alone." "Shut up." But my voice cracked saying it. The headaches were getting worse. Sometimes I'd lose chunks of time, coming back to myself standing in places I didn't remember going. Yesterday I found myself outside the elementary school, watching kids play at recess. The voice had been quiet then, just letting me watch. That scared me more than its threats. I forced myself to remember that night. The nets pulling heavy, Douglas shouting warnings about the winch, the snap of metal, the shock of cold water. My crew's voices fading as the current dragged me away from the boat. Then the light. That strange glow rising from depths that went down forever. The pressure should have killed me when it dragged me down. Instead, I found myself breathing in that cave, surrounded by its collection. The creature had been almost chatty at first, explaining how it had grown tired of simple feeding. Now it collected minds, keeping them at their moment of pure terror. "You offered me anything," it reminded me now. "Anything for your worthless life." I had. Panicked and desperate, I'd agreed to whatever it wanted. The thing had seemed entertained by how eager I was, like a cat toying with a mouse. It explained what I'd signed up for after I'd already said yes. Bring it fresh victims, minds untouched by age or madness. In return, I got to keep breathing. At the time, floating in that nightmare, it felt like a fair trade. The phone rang again. This time I picked up. "Shirley, thank God." Winter's voice was tight with worry. "Where have you been? Mom's been asking about you, and the kids keep wondering why Uncle Shirley doesn't come around anymore." I started to make up some excuse about being tired, about needing time to recover. But the thing shoved pictures into my mind. Kyle and Janet sleeping peacefully in their beds, so trusting, so innocent. Their minds would be perfect, clean and untouched by the world's cruelty. "I'm fine," I managed. "Just need some space." "You don't sound fine. You sound—" She paused. "Scared." "Tell her to come over," the voice pushed. Tell her you need help. She'll come by herself. Winter, The word stuck in my throat. Part of me wanted to confess everything, to beg her to help me find a way out of this. But how do you explain a deal with something that shouldn't exist? How do you tell your sister that her presence makes an ancient horror hungry? I'm coming over, she said. No. The word came out sharper than I meant. Don't. I'm sick. Might be contagious. Silence on the other end. Then, Shirley, what happened out there? And don't tell me you just fell overboard. Douglas said the equipment was fine when they found you. Said it looked like something had grabbed the nets from below. My blood went cold. Douglas had been asking questions, paying attention to details I'd hoped he'd miss. The thing stirred in my mind, suddenly interested. This Douglas, it whispered. He knows too much. Perhaps he should be first. Douglas doesn't know anything, I said, not sure if I was talking to Winter or the voice. What? Nothing. Look, I need to go. Shirley, please. Whatever's wrong. We can figure it out. You don't have to handle this alone. But I did, because the other option was watching that creature add my family to its collection. I'd seen what it did to people's minds, how it trapped them in endless fear. I couldn't let that happen to Winter, to Kyle and Janet. I'll call you later, I lied, and hung up. The thing's satisfaction washed over me like a wave. Good. Keep them away until you're ready to bring them properly. Their fear will be exquisite. I stumbled to the bathroom and threw up, my body rejecting the horror of what I'd become. In the mirror, my reflection looked like a stranger. Hollow cheeks, dark circles under my eyes, skin pale as a corpse. The creature was consuming me from within, wearing me down until I'd be too weak to fight back. 1 month, it had told me. Bring me 5 minds, and our deal is complete. 3 weeks left. 3 weeks to figure out how to kill something that had been walking this earth since before humans existed. 3 weeks to find a way out of a deal that felt unbreakable. Or 3 weeks to pick which innocent people would die instead of me. The voice faded back to its usual quiet murmur, happy to wait. It knew it had all the time in the world. Every day I put this off. Every night I spent awake fighting what it wanted. I got weaker. Soon I wouldn't be strong enough to say no. I looked out at the ocean again, at the black water that concealed such awful secrets. Somewhere down there, it waited with endless patience, surrounded by the floating corpses of everyone who'd tried to bargain with it before. And I was just the latest fool who thought he could outsmart something older than civilization itself. The nets felt wrong from the start. I should have trusted that gut feeling, should have told Douglas to cut the lines and call it a night. But we'd been out here for 6 hours with nothing to show for it, and the fuel costs alone would eat into next week's grocery money. Something big down there, Shirley, Douglas called from the winch controls. His voice carried that edge it got when equipment started acting up. Feels like we hooked a whale. I moved to the back of the boat, watching the cables pull tight against whatever we'd hooked. The boat tilted slightly to the left, which wasn't normal for any school of fish I'd ever seen. Through the murky water, I could make out shapes moving below. Too many to count. Too deep to make out clearly. How much line we got out? I asked. 200 feet and change. Whatever it is, it's not coming up easy. The winch motor groaned, a sound I'd heard way too many times before equipment died on me completely. We'd already swapped out the main bearing twice this season, and I couldn't handle another repair bill. Ease up on the throttle, I said. Let's bring it up slow. But Douglas was right. Something huge had gotten caught in our nets. The boat shook with each turn of the winch, and I could feel the hull straining against forces that made no sense. Fish didn't fight back like this. Fish didn't work together. Shirley, We need to cut the lines. Douglas's knuckles were white on the controls. This is going to snap something important. I knew he was right. 20 years of fishing had taught me when to cut my losses and head home. But Winter's kids needed new winter coats, and Mom's medication wasn't getting any cheaper. One good catch could make the difference between paying bills and borrowing money I didn't have. "Give it another minute," I said. That minute cost me everything. The winch cable snapped with a crack that split the air. The sudden release sent me stumbling backward, my boots sliding on the slick deck. I felt the boat's rail catch my lower back, felt my balance vanish, felt the cold air whip past as I dropped. The ocean slammed into me with brutal force. The shock of it wiped my mind clean except for one desperate thought: get to the surface. I kicked hard, fighting against my waterlogged clothes and heavy boots, bursting through to air that felt almost tropical compared to the freezing water below. "Douglas!" I shouted, but my voice sounded thin against the engine noise. The boat was maybe 30 yards away, close enough that I could see Douglas moving around the deck, probably trying to assess the damage to our equipment. I started swimming toward them, but the current was much stronger than I'd thought. Every stroke forward seemed to push me 2 strokes sideways. The boat's lights got smaller instead of bigger. "Hey!" I tried again, waving one arm while treading water. "Man overboard!" But they couldn't hear me over the engine and their own voices shouting back and forth about the broken winch. I watched them work, watched the gap between us widen, and felt real fear hit me for the first time. The water was maybe 40 degrees. I had minutes before hypothermia made swimming impossible, maybe an hour before it killed me. I needed to stay calm, save my energy, and hope Douglas would notice I wasn't on deck. That's when I saw the light. At first, I thought it was their spotlight, finally sweeping the water to look for me. But the glow came from below, not above. Deep below, like someone had dropped a flare into the ocean, and it was still falling. I treaded water, staring down into depths that should have been black as ink. The light pulsed slowly, rhythmically, like a visible pulse. It was beautiful in a way that made my skin crawl. The cold was getting to me. My legs felt heavy, my arms clumsy. I needed to focus on staying afloat, not on whatever weird glow was putting on a show beneath me. But the brightness was getting stronger. I could see it clearly now, a pale green glow that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. It lit up the water around me, showing me details I didn't want to see. The ocean here was deeper than it should be, falling away into a darkness that the brightness couldn't reach. Something brushed against my leg. I jerked away, kicking hard, but there was nothing there. Just water and that growing light and the horrible certainty that something else was down here with me. The boat had vanished. I couldn't see its lights anymore, couldn't hear the engine. Either they'd moved too far away, or the cold was messing with my senses worse than I'd realized. Something brushed my arm. Soft, almost curious. I spun in the water, searching for whatever lurked beneath me. The glow was near enough now that I could tell it wasn't coming from any single source. It seemed to rise from the water itself, or from something so massive that I couldn't see where it ended. "Stay calm," I said out loud, my voice strange in the empty air. "Just stay calm and float. They'll come back for you." But even as I said it, I knew Douglas would think I was below deck checking the engine or tying down loose gear. It might be an hour before he realized I was gone. I didn't have an hour. The glow surrounded me now, turning the water into something that looked more like liquid glass than ocean. I could see down maybe 50 feet, and what I saw made no sense. Shapes moved in the depths, not fish, too large, too purposeful. They circled beneath me with a coordination that spoke of intelligence, of planning. I tried to swim away from the light, but my arms barely responded. The cold had gone from uncomfortable to dangerous, and I could feel my body starting to shut down non-essential functions. That's when something grabbed my ankle, not brushed against, grabbed, with strength that felt like a steel cable wrapped around my leg. I had time for one breath, one desperate gulp of air, before it pulled me under. The water closed over my head and I was falling, dragged down by something I couldn't see or fight. I thrashed against it, tried to kick free, but whatever held me was stronger than any current or sea creature I'd ever come across. The pressure should have crushed me. At 50 feet, then 100, then depths that made my ears scream in protest. But somehow I wasn't dying. Somehow I could still think, still struggle, even as the surface vanished far above. The glow was everywhere now, showing me the impossible truth of where I was being taken. The ocean floor here dropped away into a chasm that seemed endless. And rising from that pit, carved into rock that looked older than anything I'd ever seen, was a cave large enough to hold a cathedral. I was pulled through an opening that should have been filled with water but wasn't. Instead, I found myself gasping in air that tasted of salt and something else, something organic and old and wrong. The cavern stretched out around me, its walls covered in the same glowing light that had drawn me down. But it wasn't algae or any natural thing. It was them. Thousands of human bodies hung in the air around me, held up by something I couldn't figure out. Men, women, children, all perfectly kept, all staring with eyes that showed pure terror. They weren't dead. I could see that right away, and it was awful. Their chests went up and down in slow, steady breaths. Their eyes followed movement. They were alive, awake, and totally helpless. And in the middle of it all, something huge and patient waited for me to get what I was looking at. Something that had been gathering people for decades. The thing spoke without words, its voice sliding through my mind like thick liquid. "I am older than your species," it said. And I could feel the truth of that statement in my bones. I have fed on human thoughts and flesh since your kind first learned to fear the dark. I floated there in that cavern, surrounded by thousands of preserved bodies, trying to process what I was hearing. The walls pulsed with that sickly green light, and every surface seemed to breathe with old evil. "What do you want?" I managed to whisper. "Want?" The creature's amusement felt like ice scraping against my skull. I have moved beyond simple wants. For thousands of years I fed on minds as they came to me. Sailors lost in storms, swimmers taken by currents. But such feeding grew. Boring. The floating bodies around me moved slightly, their eyes following me. I could see now that they weren't just preserved. They were awake, conscious, trapped in whatever nightmare the thing had created for them. "Now I collect," it continued, each mind at its moment of perfect terror, frozen forever at the peak of fear. "They provide entertainment. Let me go." The words came out broken, desperate. "Please, I have a family, people who need me. Family." The idea seemed to bounce around in its mind like a marble in a jar. "Yes, I remember family. The connections that make fear so much sweeter. Tell me about them." Pictures rushed through my head. Not my own memories, but something the thing was dragging from my thoughts. Winter laughing at Sunday dinner. Kyle showing me a drawing he'd made of my boat. Janet reading aloud from her favorite book, stumbling over the big words but determined to finish. "No," I said. but my voice had no strength left. The woman, your sister, she's already carrying so much worry. And the kids, their minds would be pure, untouched by the world's cruelties. Don't. I tried to swim away, but there was nowhere to go in this place that existed outside normal reality. Don't touch them. I don't need to touch them, the thing said, and I could feel its smile like a knife cutting through my thoughts. You will bring them to me. Never. Never is a word people use when they think they still have options. The creature moved closer, and I sensed something huge with writhing tentacles shifting in the blackness past the cavern's light. But maybe we can work something out. You want to stay alive, don't you? To get back to your family. Hope sparked in my chest, foolish and frantic. Yes. Then we'll make a deal. Your freedom right now in exchange for services down the road. What kind of considerations? Fresh minds for my collection. Bring me those whose fear will be pure, untainted by age or madness. Do this, and you may return to your surface world. I should have asked more questions. Should have demanded details, time limits, specific numbers. But floating there in that nightmare, surrounded by the creature's trophies, all I could think about was breathing air again. Seeing Winter's face, holding my nephew and niece. Anything, I said. I'll do anything. Anything. The word repeated through the cavern, and every floating body seemed to shake at the sound. How wonderfully complete. Very well, Shirley Hansen. I accept your word. The creature's satisfaction washed over me like a wave of nausea. You will return to your world, alive and whole. But you are bound now, connected to me across any distance. When I call, you will answer. When I hunger, you will feed me. Wait, I don't understand. But the cavern was already fading around me, the green light dimming as something massive lifted me up through enormous depths. The last thing I heard was the creature's voice, patient and eternal. You will. Then I was choking on salt water, my lungs burning as I broke the surface. Real surface this time. I could see stars overhead, could feel the familiar roll of ocean swells. Pieces of my boat's equipment floated around me, including a section of the broken winch that I grabbed onto desperately. The cold slammed into me like a wall, jolting my system back to the immediate problem of staying alive. How long had I been down there? Minutes? Hours? My body felt like it had been underwater for days, but my watch had stopped working. I floated there, holding onto debris, trying to tell myself that what I'd just been through was nothing more than hypothermia messing with my head. People see all sorts of crazy stuff when they're dying from exposure. Ancient sea monsters, underwater caves, bargains with creatures older than dirt. All of it could be explained by lack of oxygen and a brain shutting down from the cold. But even as I tried to convince myself of that, I could sense something different in my mind. A presence that wasn't there before. Calm and alert. Watching. Douglas found me 3 hours later, tracking the GPS coordinates from where we'd last been spotted. By then I was barely awake, my body temperature having dropped to dangerous levels. They pulled me onto the rescue boat and wrapped me in emergency blankets while calling for a Coast Guard helicopter. Jesus, Shirley, Douglas kept saying as they worked to warm me up. We thought you were dead. What happened to the boat? Winch snapped, I mumbled through chattering teeth. Went overboard. But the equipment, we found pieces scattered over a quarter mile. Looks like something grabbed the nets from underneath and just tore everything apart. I closed my eyes, feeling that presence stir in response to his words. Don't know. Don't remember much after hitting the water. The helicopter ride to the hospital was a blur of medical equipment and worried voices. They pumped warm fluids into my veins and watched my vital signs while I drifted in and out of consciousness. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those floating bodies, their faces frozen in endless terror. The doctor said I was lucky to be alive. Severe hypothermia, they explained, could cause all kinds of brain symptoms: hallucinations, memory loss, confusion, all perfectly normal given what my body had been through. I spent 2 days in the hospital, letting them run their tests and ask the same questions over and over. What did I remember about the accident? Had I hit my head when I fell? Was I having any problems since then? I told them what they wanted to hear. Simple accident, equipment failure, lucky rescue. The kind of story that made sense in their world of medical charts and insurance forms. But late at night, when the hospital was quiet and the nurses had finished their rounds, I could feel it down there in the depths. Patient, waiting, tied to me by invisible threads I couldn't see or cut. Winter came by on the second day, bringing flowers and a bunch of worried questions. She pulled up a chair next to my bed, squeezing my hand while she told me how terrified she'd been when Douglas called. "You look terrible," she said, studying my face. "Thinner. And your eyes." "I'm fine," I lied. "Just tired. The kids want to see you when you're feeling better. Kyle drew you a picture of your boat. Well, what he thinks your boat looks like. Janet's been asking if Uncle Shirley is going to be okay." As she talked about them, I felt that presence stir again, alert, wanting. "Such sweet children," a voice whispered in the back of my mind. "Their terror would be delicious." I squeezed Winter's hand tighter, trying to push the voice away. "Tell them I'll see them soon." But even as I said it, I wondered if that was a promise I should keep. Because something had followed me back from those depths. Something that was very interested in my family. And I was starting to understand that the real nightmare hadn't ended in that underwater cavern. It was just beginning. 2 weeks after the hospital released me, I sat in Winter's kitchen trying to pretend everything was normal. The meatloaf smelled like Mom's recipe, and Janet was telling me about her science project on ocean currents, but I could barely focus on her words. That voice had been quiet all day, which somehow made me more worried than when it was actively tormenting me. "Uncle Shirley, you're not eating," Kyle said, poking at his own food. He had Winter's green eyes but kept them downcast most of the time, like he was expecting trouble. "Just tired, buddy." I forced a bite down, though everything tasted like cardboard lately. "Tell me more about that drawing you made." Winter watched me from across the table, her concern clear on her face. "You've lost weight. When's the last time you ate something decent?" "I eat plenty." Another lie to add to the growing pile. Sleep and food had become afterthoughts since the accident. My body felt like it was running on fumes and anxiety. "Are you going back out on the boat soon?" Janet asked. "Tommy's dad said you haven't been to the marina in weeks." The question stung more than it should have. "Equipment needs fixing, the expensive kind." "Douglas stopped by the hardware store asking about you," Winter said carefully. He seemed worried. Before I could answer, the front door slammed open hard enough to rattle the windows. Sky stumbled in, bringing the smell of beer and cigarettes with him. His work shirt was wrinkled and stained, his dark hair a mess like he'd been running his hands through it. "Great," he muttered, seeing me at the table. "The whole family's here for dinner and nobody thought to call me." "You said you were working late," Winter said quietly. "I left a message. Don't give me that shit." Sky's words slurred together as he grabbed a beer from the fridge. "I work my ass off all day and come home to find you playing house with your brother." Kyle and Janet had gone completely still, their forks frozen halfway to their mouths. I'd seen this before. Kids learning to disappear when adults got dangerous. "Sky, please," Winter said. "The children are eating." The children. He took a long drink, then wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. Maybe the children need to learn how the real world works. Maybe they need to understand that money doesn't grow on trees. I kept my voice steady. "Why don't you sit down and have some dinner? Winter made plenty." Sky's attention turned to me, his eyes narrowing. "Oh, now the big brother's going to tell me what to do in my own house? You can't even keep your own boat running, but you want to give me advice." "I'm just saying..." "You're just saying nothing." He stepped closer to the table, swaying slightly. "You know what your problem is, Shirley. You think you're better than everyone else. Think you can waltz in here and play hero." Winter stood up slowly, her hands trembling. "Maybe we should talk about this later when..." "When what? When I'm sober enough to listen to more of your complaints?" Sky's voice rose to a shout. "I'm sick of this. Sick of you spending money we don't have. Sick of your brother acting like he owns the place. Sick of everything." He grabbed Winter's arm, his fingers pressing hard into her skin. "You want to know about money problems? Let me show you what happens when you don't listen." That's when I got to my feet. "Get your hands off her." "Or what?" Sky laughed, but there was nothing funny about the sound. "You going to make me? You can barely keep yourself together, let alone fight someone else's battles." I caught Kyle and Janet watching from the corner of my eye, their faces white with terror. This was their everyday reality. This was what they dealt with constantly. "Let her go, Sky." Instead, he shoved Winter backward. She stumbled, catching herself against the counter, and I saw her wince as her hip hit the edge. "There," Sky said, spreading his arms wide. "Happy now? Want to see what else happens when people don't show me proper respect in my own house?" He grabbed an empty beer bottle from the counter, gripping it by the neck like a club. The kitchen light hit the glass, making it shine. "Daddy, stop," Janet whispered, but he ignored her. I stepped between them, keeping my hands visible and non-threatening. "Come on, man. This isn't solving anything. Get out of my way. The kids are scared. Look at them." For a second, something flashed across his face. Maybe shame, maybe awareness of what he was doing. But then his expression hardened again. "They need to learn that actions have consequences. That when mommy spends money we don't have on fancy dinners, everyone suffers." "We had leftover ground beef," Winter said quietly. "It cost $3. "Don't talk back to me." Sky spun toward her, raising the bottle. I grabbed his wrist before he could swing. "That's enough." We stood there for a moment, locked together, and I could smell the alcohol on his breath. His eyes were bloodshot and angry, but underneath that I saw something else. Fear. He was scared of losing control, scared of what he might do, but too proud or too drunk to stop himself. "Let go of me," he said. "Put the bottle down first. This is my house, my family. You don't get to tell me what to do. I'm not telling you anything. I'm asking you to put it down and walk away." For a long moment, we stayed frozen like that. Then Sky's grip loosened and the bottle fell to the floor, breaking apart against the linoleum. "Fuck this," he muttered, pulling away from me. "I don't need this shit." He grabbed his jacket from the back of a chair and headed for the door. "I'm going out. Don't wait up." The door slammed behind him, leaving us in sudden, ringing silence. Kyle started crying first, quiet sobs that he tried to muffle with his hands. Janet went to him immediately, wrapping her arms around her little brother like she'd done this before. Winter dropped into her chair and buried her face in her hands. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you had to see that." "How long has this been going on?" I asked, though I already knew the answer would be too long. "It's gotten worse lately. The drinking, the anger. He lost another job last month and..." She looked up at me, her eyes red. "He's been taking it out on all of us." She rolled up her sleeves, and I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Her arms were covered in bruises, some fresh and purple, others fading to yellow and green. Finger marks where he'd grabbed her, bigger bruises where he'd pushed her into things. "Jesus, Winter. It's not just me anymore," she whispered, glancing toward the kids. "Last week he hit Kyle for spilling juice. Yesterday he grabbed Janet's arm so hard he left marks." I looked at the children, really studied them, and saw what I'd been too distracted to notice before. Kyle's black eye that I'd figured came from playground roughhousing. The way Janet jumped when adults moved too quickly. The careful way they both watched Sky, like small animals keeping track of a predator. "You need to leave him," I said. "It's not that simple. He's threatened to take the kids if I try. Says he'll tell the court I'm an unfit mother, that I can't support them on my own." Winter's voice broke. "Maybe he's right. Maybe I can't. That's bullshit and you know it." "Is it? Look at me, Shirley. I can barely keep this family together as it is. How am I supposed to do it alone?" I knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in mine. "You're not alone. You have me. You have Mom and Dad. We'll work something out." "He'll never let us go. You don't know what he's like when he's really angry. The things he says he'll do." As she talked, something stirred in the back of my mind. Not the voice, something else. A cold, calculating part of me that I didn't recognize. Sky was a problem that needed solving. He was hurting innocent people, scaring children, making my sister's life hell. The world would be better off without him. The thought should have horrified me. Instead, it felt reasonable, made sense. He'd make a perfect first offering, the voice whispered, so quietly I almost missed it. His disappearance would be a gift to your family. Justice and necessity aligned. I squeezed Winter's hands tighter, trying to push the voice away, but it had planted a seed, and I could feel it growing in the dark corners of my mind. "We'll figure something out," I said again, but the words felt different now, heavier with possibility. Winter nodded, wiping her eyes. "Thank you for being here tonight, for stopping him." "Always," I said and meant it. But as I helped clean up the broken glass and got the kids settled down for the night, that voice kept whispering, showing me images of Sky walking home alone from the bars, reminding me how easy it would be to solve this problem permanently. By the time I left Winter's house, I was already thinking about Murphy's bar and the dark stretch of road between there and home. The voice got louder after that night at Winter's house. Not just during quiet moments anymore. It whispered while I tried to eat breakfast, muttered suggestions when I walked past the hardware store, offered helpful commentary when I saw families with kids. "He deserves what's coming to him," it would say whenever I thought about Sky. "You saw what he did, what he's still doing." I tried to push it away, but the thing had a point. 3 days after the dinner incident, Winter called me crying so hard I could barely understand what she was saying. "He hit Kyle," she finally managed to get out. "Punched him right in the face because he spilled cereal on the table." My grip tightened around the phone. "How bad?" Black eye, split lip. "Kyle's 8 years old, Shirley. 8. Her voice cracked. "And when I tried to stop him, Sky said next time he'd make sure Kyle learned his lesson properly. The thing purred with satisfaction in the back of my mind. See? The child suffers while you hesitate. How noble of you. Where is he now? I asked. Passed out on the couch. He went through a whole six-pack after it happened. Winter took a shaky breath. I can't do this anymore, but I don't know how to get out. You know exactly how, the voice whispered. One simple solution that fixes everything. I told Winter I'd figure something out and hung up, but my hands were shaking. Not from fear this time, from anger. Pure, clean rage that felt better than anything I'd experienced since the accident. The creature fed on that anger, growing stronger. Over the next few days, I found myself paying attention to things I'd never noticed before. Like how Sky always stayed late at Murphy's bar on Friday and Saturday nights. How he walked home alone down Harbor Street, which had exactly 3 working streetlights between the bar and his house. How he was usually drunk enough to stumble, making him an easy target. Such useful observations, the thing said with approval. You're learning to think strategically. I wasn't planning anything, just noticing. But when I drove past Murphy's that Saturday night and saw Sky's beat-up truck in the parking lot, I found myself pulling over to wait. The voice had gone quiet, which somehow made everything worse. When it wasn't actively bothering me, I could almost pretend I was making my own choices. That the cold reasoning running through my head was mine alone. Sky was a problem that needed solving. He hurt innocent people. He terrorized children. The world would be better without him, and Winter would be free to build a real life for herself and the kids. I sat in my truck for 2 hours, watching the bar's neon sign flash against the darkness. Other customers came and went, but Sky's truck stayed put. Around midnight, I drove to the marina and checked my boat's fuel levels. Told myself I was just being thorough about maintenance. The next morning, Winter called again. He threatened to kill me, she said without preamble, last night when he got home. Said if I ever tried to leave him, he'd make sure nobody found my body. Did the kids hear? Janet did. She was hiding at the top of the stairs. Winter's voice was hollow, exhausted. She asked me this morning if Daddy was really going to hurt me. What am I supposed to tell her? Tell her that Uncle Shirley is going to fix everything, the voice suggested helpfully. I drove to the hardware store that afternoon and bought 50 feet of marine rope and a roll of duct tape. Told the clerk I needed them for boat repairs, which wasn't technically a lie. I was planning to use my boat. The supplies sat in my garage for 3 days while I convinced myself I was just weighing my choices, considering different approaches. The voice complimented my planning, reminding me how much smoother things would go if I had the right tools on hand. You're protecting your family, it reminded me constantly. This is what good men do when the system fails them. And the system had failed them. I'd seen Winter's bruises, Kyle's black eye, the way Janet jumped when adults moved too quickly. The police would need evidence. Lawyers would drag things out for months. And meanwhile, Sky would keep hurting them. One night's work solves everything, the creature whispered. Justice and what had to be done lined up perfectly. By Thursday, the voice had worn me down completely. Every time I tried to object, it showed me Winter crying or Kyle's busted lip. Every time I hesitated, it reminded me what Sky had threatened. He's planning something worse, it told me. Can't you feel it? The violence is getting out of hand. Soon he'll cross the line. There's no coming back from. I knew it was telling the truth. Guys like Sky don't get better. They keep getting worse until someone stops them for good. Friday night, I drove past Murphy's again. Sky's truck was there, same as always. I parked across the street and waited, watching the bar's entrance. Around 11:30, he stumbled out, swaying slightly as he headed toward Harbor Street. I could have followed him then. Could have pulled over, offered him a ride, taken him straight to the marina. But something held me back. Maybe the last piece of my old self, still fighting the thing's influence. Tomorrow, the voice said patiently. Tomorrow you'll be ready. Saturday crawled by slower than molasses. I cleaned my boat, checked the engine, made sure everything was working right. The rope and tape went into a storage compartment where I could grab them quick, but nobody would see them. Winter called around dinner time. He's already drunk, she said quietly. Started before noon. The kids are scared to come downstairs. Keep them in their rooms tonight, I told her. Lock the doors if you have to. Shirley, I think he's planning something. He keeps talking about teaching everyone lessons, making sure we all understand who's in charge. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I'm scared of what he might do. Tonight, the voice said with complete certainty. It has to be tonight. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring at my hands. They looked steady, normal, like they belonged to someone who'd never hurt another person. But that person was gone. Had been gone since the moment I made that deal in the underwater cavern. What was left was something harder, more practical. Something that understood that protecting innocent people sometimes required terrible choices. The thing's satisfaction washed over me like warm water. Finally, it said, You're beginning to understand. I drove to Murphy's at 10:30 and parked in my usual spot across the street. Sky's truck sat in the lot like a promise. Through the bar's windows, I could see him at his regular stool, waving his hands around as he yelled at the bartender. The voice had gone completely quiet now, leaving me alone with my thoughts. But I didn't need its help anymore. I knew exactly what I was going to do. At 11:45, Sky pushed through the bar's front door and started his wobbly walk toward Harbor Street. I gave him a 30-second head start, then got out of my truck and followed. I followed Sky down Harbor Street, staying about 50 yards behind him. He moved between the streetlights like he was playing some kind of game, stopping twice to rest against parked cars. The voice in my head had gone completely silent, which should have made me feel better, but somehow made everything seem more real. When he turned the corner toward the residential area, I jogged to catch up. Sky, I called out. He spun around, nearly losing his balance. What the hell? Shirley? His words slurred together. You following me now? Just heading home myself. Saw you leave Murphy's. I kept my voice casual, friendly even. Thought maybe we could talk. Talk about what? He squinted at me suspiciously. You want to lecture me about dinner the other night? Because I don't need that shit. Actually, I wanted to apologize. I was out of line, getting between you and Winter like that. The lies came easier than they should have. It's your house, your family. I had no right. Sky straightened up a little, surprised. Damn right you didn't. The thing is, I've been thinking about what you said, about money problems, about the stress you're under. I stepped closer, lowering my voice like we were sharing secrets. I might have a solution. What kind of solution? The kind we can't discuss on the street. Too many ears around here. I gestured toward the houses lining Harbor Street, most with their windows still lit. Why don't we take a ride down to the marina? We can talk on my boat, away from everyone. Sky's eyes narrowed. Why would I want to do that? Because what I'm offering could solve your problems permanently, but it's not exactly legal, if you know what I mean. I let that hang in the air between us. Of course, if you're not interested. Wait. He grabbed my arm as I started to turn away. What kind of money are we talking about? The kind that would let you and Winter start fresh somewhere new. Maybe down south where the cost of living's cheaper. I shrugged. But like I said, it's not something we can discuss here. Sky glanced around at the empty street, then back at me. The alcohol had made him paranoid but also greedy. This better not be some kind of setup. Setup for what? I'm trying to help family here. He studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. All right, but this better be worth my time. We walked to the marina in relative silence, Sky stumbling occasionally on the uneven pavement. The docks were deserted except for a few security lights throwing patches of yellow between the boats. My vessel sat in Slip 12, a 30-foot commercial fishing boat that had seen better years but still ran clean. Nice night for a boat ride, I said, untying the mooring lines. Yeah, whatever. Sky climbed aboard clumsily, nearly falling into the water. So what's this big opportunity you're so excited about? I started the engine, letting it warm up while I cast off the remaining lines. Insurance work. The kind where boats sometimes have accidents far from shore. Insurance fraud? Sky's voice perked up with interest. How much are we talking? Enough to make it worth the risk. I eased the boat away from the dock, heading toward the harbor mouth. But we need to be smart about it. Plan everything carefully. The marina lights shrank behind us as we headed into open water. Sky had made himself comfortable on one of the bench seats, seeming fine with wherever we were going. The booze was doing its job. He wasn't asking the questions he should have been. So, how does this work exactly? He asked. Well, first we need to get far enough out that nobody can see us from shore. I pushed the throttle forward, increasing our speed. Then I show you the setup. Sky nodded, leaning back against the gunwale. Smart. Don't want any witnesses. The irony of his words wasn't lost on me. We rode in silence for another 10 minutes, the boat cutting through calm water under a clear sky. When I judged we were far enough out, maybe 3 miles from the nearest land, I cut the engine. All right, Sky said, standing up unsteadily. Show me what you got. I opened the storage compartment where I'd stashed the rope and tape. Actually, Sky, there's something I need to tell you first. What's that? I pulled out the wrench I'd placed on top of the supplies. This isn't about insurance money. He had just enough time to look confused before I swung the wrench at his temple. The impact made a sound like a baseball hitting a catcher's mitt, and Sky dropped to the deck without another word. I stood over his unconscious body, breathing hard. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from excitement. The realization should have horrified me, but instead it felt like finally scratching an itch I'd been ignoring for weeks. Working fast, I used the rope to tie his hands behind his back, then secured his ankles together. The duct tape went over his mouth. Couldn't have him yelling when he woke up. I'd rehearsed these knots during my restless nights, and they held tight. Sky came to about 5 minutes later, his eyes opening slowly before going wide with panic. He tried to talk through the tape, making only muffled noises. Easy there, I said, sitting on the opposite bench. Don't hurt yourself struggling. He fought against the ropes, eyes sweeping across the boat, searching for a way out. Once it hit him how completely he was caught. His attention snapped to me with a mix of fury and fear. I know you want to ask questions, I continued conversationally. Like why I brought you out here, what I'm planning to do with you. The truth is, I made a deal with something that lives in these waters. Something old and hungry. Sky fought harder against the ropes, making the boat sway back and forth. See? It saved my life a few weeks ago when I fell overboard. But nothing comes free, especially from things that have been around since before humans learned to make fire. I leaned forward, meeting his eyes. It wants fresh minds to add to its collection, and you, Sky, are going to be my first payment. The muffled noises he made through the tape could have been begging or swearing. I couldn't tell, and didn't really care. The funny thing is, I actually feel good about this choice. You hurt my sister. You terrorized those kids. You threatened to kill Winter just last night. I stood up, moving to the boat's rail. So really, I'm doing the world a favor. I grabbed Sky under his arms and pulled him toward the edge of the boat. He was heavier than I'd expected, dead weight made worse by his struggles, but adrenaline gave me strength I didn't know I had. "The thing down there has been waiting patiently," I said, positioning him at the rail. "It's probably watching us right now, getting excited about its new toy." Sky's eyes went wide above the tape, tears running down his cheeks. He was trying to say something, probably pleading, but the words came out muffled. "Don't worry," I told him. "From what I understand, you'll stay conscious for a very long time, maybe forever. Think of it as the ultimate timeout." I pushed him over the side. Sky hit the water with a splash, going under right away because of his tied-up arms and legs. He came back up, fighting hard to stay afloat, but the ropes made it impossible to swim. That's when the water started to glow. The pale green light started deep below, rising slowly like a sick sunrise. Sky's movements became more frantic as he saw it, his muffled screams carrying across the water. Something huge moved beneath the surface, creating currents that pulled Sky away from the boat. The glow got brighter, and I could see shapes in the water, tentacles or appendages, too many to count or fully understand. Sky vanished beneath the surface with barely a ripple. I stood at the rail, watching the glow disappear back into the depths. The satisfaction hit me hard and fast. Justice served, family protected, duty done. For the first time in weeks, the knot in my shoulders finally loosened. But the feeling didn't last. As the water went back to its usual black, what I'd just done hit me like ice water. I'd killed someone, bound him up and thrown him to that thing like he was just fish food. The voice stirred in my mind, pleased and satisfied. "Well done," it purred, though his mind was somewhat bitter from all that alcohol and rage. "Next time, we'll choose someone cleaner. Next time." I grabbed the boat's rail, my knuckles white. That was it. That was the deal. "Oh, my dear Shirley," the creature laughed. "Did you really think one corrupted mind would satisfy our arrangement? You promised me fresh victims, plural. This was merely the first installment. No, we had a deal, one life for mine. You offered me anything I wanted in exchange for your freedom. I want more than one bitter drunk. I want pure minds, untainted by vice and violence. I want children." The words struck me hard. "Never." "We shall see," it said, and then went quiet. I started the engine with trembling hands and headed back toward shore. Behind me, the water showed no sign of what had just happened. Sky Sanchez had simply disappeared into the darkness, leaving nothing but the rope and tape I'd need to get rid of. By the time I reached the marina, I'd talked myself into believing that Winter and the kids were safer now, that I'd done what was necessary, even if how I'd done it was wrong. But buried in my thoughts, something old and hungry was already planning its next victim. The cops showed up 3 times that first week after Sky vanished. Each visit, I'd sit at my kitchen table and give them the same story. Hadn't seen him since dinner at Winter's, had no clue where he went, figured he probably ran off like he'd always threatened. Detective Morrison, this worn-out guy with gray stubble, kept asking the same questions with tiny changes. When exactly did you last talk to Mr. Sanchez? Did he seem upset about anything? Any idea why he left his truck at Murphy's bar? I shook my head and played the worried brother-in-law. Sky was always going on about starting fresh somewhere new. Maybe he finally went and did it. Without his wallet, his truck, his clothes. Morrison's pen tapped against his notepad. Most people take something when they run off. Maybe he was drunker than usual. You know how he got. Morrison looked at my face like he was trying to figure me out. Your sister said you two got into it at dinner the other night. Nothing serious. Family stuff. I kept my voice steady, helpful. Look, I didn't like the guy much, but I wouldn't wish him harm. Winter and the kids need stability. That part was true enough. Winter had called me the morning after Sky disappeared, her voice shaky but not broken. He didn't come home last night, his truck's still at Murphy's. You call the police? Not yet. I keep thinking maybe he'll just show up. A pause. Is that terrible? That part of me hopes he doesn't. I'd told her it wasn't terrible at all. The kids were different too. Kyle's black eye was healing, and he'd started talking at normal volume again instead of whispering. Janet had stopped flinching when adults moved too quickly. They asked about their stepfather exactly once. Janet wondering if Daddy was coming back. Kyle hoping he wasn't. Winter filed the missing person report on day 3, going through the motions, because that's what wives were supposed to do. But I could see the relief in her shoulders, the way she stood straighter without constantly watching for Sky's mood changes. For almost 2 weeks, I let myself believe I'd actually figured something out. The voice in my head stayed quiet, and I started sleeping through the night again. I even went back to the marina, checking on my boat and talking with Douglas about getting back to work. You look better, he said, coiling rope with practiced efficiency. More like yourself. Feeling better. Think I'm finally getting past the accident. Douglas nodded, but his eyes stayed worried. That was some scary stuff. Thought we'd lost you for good. If only he knew how close he'd come to being right. The voice came back on a Tuesday night while I was watching television. I'd been flipping through channels, avoiding the news reports about Sky's disappearance, when the familiar cold presence slipped through my thoughts. Disappointing, it said without preamble. I muted the TV, my stomach dropping. What? Your offering was quite unsatisfactory, bitter and corrupted, tainted by years of alcohol and violence. The creature's tone carried the same disappointment a restaurant critic might use for overcooked fish. I had hoped for something more refined. We had a deal, one life for mine. The thing's laughter made my blood run cold. Oh, my dear Shirley, did you really think one bitter drunk would satisfy our arrangement? That's what we agreed on. You offered me anything I desired in exchange for your freedom. I desire more than one corrupted mind. Much more. I squeezed the remote until the plastic groaned under my grip. I'm not killing anyone else. The voice fell silent for a moment, and I almost hoped it had given up. Then pictures rushed into my head. Douglas working alone on his boat, Florence Chapman watering her plants, Rose Webster heading to her car after school. All of them living their normal lives, not knowing they were being watched. Such innocent minds, the creature purred. Clean of sin or madness, their terror would be perfect. No, I stood up, pacing to the window. Find someone else to do your dirty work. There is no one else. You are bound to me now, connected across any distance. The voice grew stronger, more demanding. You will bring me what I require, or I will take what I need directly. What's that supposed to mean? The headache slammed into my skull without warning. I collapsed to my knees, everything going fuzzy as agony tore through my head. Through the torture, I could feel the thing inside me getting bigger, pressing against my thoughts. It means I grow stronger with each passing day, while you grow weaker. Soon I will not need your cooperation at all. The agony disappeared just as fast as it started, leaving me wheezing on the floor. When my vision cleared, I found myself looking at my reflection in the dark window. Gaunt face, deep-set eyes, skin like old parchment. "You have 1 month," the voice said pleasantly. "Bring me 5 pure minds, and our bargain will be complete. Refuse, and I'll devour your consciousness entirely before moving on to more willing servants." 5 people? You're insane. I am ancient beyond your understanding and patient beyond your limits. 5 minds, surely. Choose them carefully. Over the next few days, the creature made sure I knew what pure minds meant. It showed me visions of potential victims, kids playing at the elementary school, old people walking their dogs, young couples holding hands at the pier, anyone whose thoughts weren't tainted by violence or addiction. The voice gave helpful commentary during these mental tours. "That one has such beautiful dreams. This one's fear would feed me for decades. Oh, and the children. Their terror is always the sweetest." I tried everything I could think of to block it out. Alcohol just made the visions clearer. Sleeping pills gave the thing more access to my dreams. Even loud music couldn't drown out a voice that spoke straight into my head. Sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I lived through the final moments of its previous victims. The crushing pressure of deep water, the terror of knowing they'd never surface again, the hopelessness as they realized what was coming. Hundreds of deaths played out in my mind like some sick movie marathon. "You see how kind I can be," the creature said during one really bad nightmare. "These memories could be yours forever if you keep fighting me." I woke up screaming, sheets soaked with sweat, the taste of salt water in my mouth. The headaches got worse too. They'd hit without warning, while I was buying groceries, talking to Douglas, even during Morrison's follow-up questions about Sky. The pain was so bad I'd have to grab whatever was nearby to keep from falling over. "You feeling all right?" Morrison asked during his last visit. "You look like hell." "Haven't been sleeping well. Worried about winter and the kids." "Uh-huh." He made a note. "Funny thing about Sky's disappearance. No signs of struggle. No evidence of foul play. But his blood alcohol was probably through the roof when he left Murphy's. Easy to have an accident in that condition." I nodded, trying to look worried instead of guilty. Of course, accidents usually leave some kind of trace. Body washes up eventually, or someone finds clothes on the beach. Morrison's eyes never left my face. This is more like he just vanished into thin air. The creature stirred with amusement. If only he knew how right he was. "Maybe he sobered up and kept walking," I suggested. "Caught a ride with someone heading out of town." "Maybe." Morrison closed his notepad. "Well, if you think of anything else, give me a call." After he left, I sat in my kitchen staring at my hands. They looked normal, steady, like they belonged to someone who'd never tied up another human being and fed them to a monster. But the voice was already whispering about the next victim, showing me images of Rose Webster grading papers in her empty classroom. "Such a dedicated teacher," it said with approval. Her mind would be perfectly pure. I put my head in my hands and tried to remember what it felt like to be a good person. That memory was already slipping away, replaced by cold calculations about who would be missed least and which victims would provide the best food for something very old and hungry. 1 month, the creature reminded me. Choose wisely. I spent 3 days at the library, hunched over books that reeked of mildew and old paper. Maritime folklore, local legends, anything that might mention sea creatures or weird things living in deep water. Most of it was junk. Tourist trap stories about ghost ships and mermaids. But buried in a 1920s collection of fishermen's tales, I found something that made my hands tremble. The Sleeper Beneath by Captain Ezra Whitmore. 3 pages about something he'd run into during a storm off the coast. Something that had whispered to him in dreams for months afterward. His description was exactly what I'd seen. The glowing phosphorescence, the huge cavern, the preserved victims floating like specimens in jars. Whitmore had tried everything to break free. Salt circles, holy water, even burning his boat and moving inland. Nothing worked. The thing had tracked him down, getting stronger, until finally, the entry stopped mid-sentence. Library records showed that Whitmore had drowned himself in a bathtub in 1923. Fascinating reading material. The voice purred as I shut the book. Though I'm afraid poor Ezra's research was quite incomplete. I didn't respond, checking out everything even remotely useful. Old binding rituals, exorcism procedures, even a book about destroying demons that some previous reader had marked up with angry question marks. You cannot destroy what has existed since before your species learned to fear the dark, the creature continued. But please, continue this amusing charade. That night I tried a protection circle made from sea salt, following instructions from a book about Celtic magic. I sat in the center of my living room, surrounded by white crystals I'd bought from a shop that smelled like incense and desperation. The voice laughed so hard I thought my skull might crack. Salt from my own domain? How delightfully ironic. The headache that followed knocked me out for 6 hours. When I woke up, the salt had made weird patterns across my floor, swirling inward like a whirlpool. I tried blessed water next, driving to 3 different churches until I found a priest willing to fill a bottle without asking too many questions. Father Martinez was young, earnest. Probably thought I was dealing with alcoholism or depression. "Sometimes we need all the help we can get," he said, handing me the water. "Faith can move mountains." I drank half the bottle that night, splashed the rest around my apartment. For about 10 minutes, the voice went quiet. Then it came back stronger than ever, amused by my desperation. "Your human gods have no power where I dwell, but their water does taste rather sweet." The worst part was how the thing started taking control during my research sessions. I'd be reading about banishment rituals when suddenly I'd find myself standing in the children's section, watching kids pick out picture books with their parents. My hands would be reaching toward a little girl with pigtails before I'd snap back to myself and run outside gasping. "Such lovely young minds," the creature would whisper afterward. "So much cleaner than that bitter drunk you gave me." These blackouts stretched longer each time. 5 minutes turned into 10, then 20. Once I snapped back to reality standing outside the elementary school during recess, my hands gripping the chain-link fence while I watched kids play kickball. A teacher was walking toward me, worry all over her face. I took off before she could ask questions. Winter called that afternoon. "Shirley, you need to tell me what's happening. You look like you haven't eaten in weeks." "I'm fine." "No, you're not. Mom's worried sick and the kids keep asking why Uncle Shirley seems so sad." Her voice cracked. "Please, after everything with Sky, I can't lose you too." The creature stirred with interest at the mention of family. Such devotion. Her mind would be particularly sweet, seasoned with all that worry and love. I hung up without another word. But Winter wasn't the only one who'd noticed something wrong. Florence Chapman showed up at my door the next evening, carrying a casserole dish and wearing the stubborn look of someone who wouldn't be turned away. "Don't even think about telling me you're fine," she said, pushing past me into the apartment. "I've known you since you were Kyle's age, and you look like death warmed over." She set the casserole on my counter, then turned to study my face with those sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. "When's the last time you had a proper meal or a full night's sleep?" "I've been having some trouble sleeping." "I'll bet you have." Florence settled into my kitchen chair like she planned to stay a while. "Funny thing, I've been having trouble sleeping too. Strange dreams about drowning, about voices calling from deep water." My blood went cold. "What kind of voices?" "Old ones. Ancient. They whisper about hunger and collection, about minds preserved in perfect terror." She leaned forward, her voice dropping. "They started the night after Sky disappeared." The thing in my head perked up, suddenly awake and paying attention. "How interesting. Looks like my reach goes further than I thought." "Florence, you need to stay away from me." "Why? What's happening, Shirley?" I wanted to tell her everything. About the deal, the creature, the way it was slowly eating away at my will to resist. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I felt my mouth moving without my permission. "Nothing's happening. You're just having bad dreams." Florence's eyes narrowed. "That wasn't your voice just then?" "Not really." The thing's amusement rippled through my thoughts. Sharp old woman. Her mind would make an excellent addition to my collection. I grabbed the edge of the counter, fighting for control. "You need to leave. Now. Not until you tell me what's wrong." "I can't." The words came out strangled, desperate. "Please, Florence, if you care about me at all, just go." She studied my face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right. But I'm not giving up on you, boy. Whatever's got its hooks in you, we'll figure out how to fight it." After she left, I sat in my kitchen trembling. The creature's influence was spreading, just like I'd feared. How many other people were starting to hear its whispers? How long before it had enough control over enough minds to stop needing me entirely? "You begin to understand," the voice said with satisfaction. "Your resistance feeds my hunger, makes me stronger. Soon I will have access to every mind in this quiet little town." "That's not going to happen." "Oh, but it already is. Shall I show you?" Pictures rushed into my head, Rose Webster grading papers while whispers bounced around her thoughts, Douglas lying awake at night as something called to him from the harbor, even Kyle turning restlessly in his bed as old voices promised him wonders beneath the waves. Your stubbornness spreads my reach like ripples in a pond. Each person who worries about you becomes more open to my touch. I pressed my palms against my temples, trying to block out the visions. Stop. I could, of course. All you need to do is bring me what I require. 5 pure minds, willingly delivered, and I will withdraw my influence from everyone else. I won't do it. Then watch them fall one by one. The creature's voice turned cold, calculating. The teacher will be first, I think. Her mind is already softening, becoming pliable. Then perhaps the old woman. She has such interesting memories of this place. And finally, the vision that flooded my brain made me double over with sickness. Kyle and Janet walking hand in hand toward the marina, their eyes blank and distant while something old called them home. Choose quickly, Shirley. My patience runs thin and my hunger grows strong. 5 willing victims, or I will take what I need from those you love most. I spent the rest of the night pacing my apartment, trying to think of alternatives, but every option led to the same conclusion. The thing was too powerful, too deeply rooted in my mind to be fought head-on, and now it was spreading to innocent people, using my connections to them as doorways for infection. By dawn, I was seriously considering the creature's offer: 5 strangers in exchange for everyone I cared about. It was an awful choice, but maybe it was the only way to stop the damage from spreading. The voice purred with satisfaction as it sensed my crumbling resolve. Such a practical man. I knew you would see reason eventually. I looked out my window at the harbor, where fishing boats were heading out for the day's work. Somewhere beneath those dark waters, an old horror waited patiently for me to make my choice. 5 lives to save dozens, 5 strangers to protect my family. The numbers were simple, even if the morality wasn't. "Excellent," the creature whispered. "Shall we begin planning?" I folded the letter 3 times before sealing it in an envelope marked Winter in my shaky handwriting. The confession sat on my kitchen table. Everything about the creature, the deal, what I'd done to Sky, and what I was about to do to myself. She'd hate me for it, but at least she'd understand why her brother had turned into a stranger. The truck keys felt cold in my palm. One drive to the marina, one last trip out to deep water, and this nightmare would end with me instead of spreading to innocent people. The creature had been quiet for the past hour, which should have been a relief, but felt more like the calm before a storm. I was halfway to the door when the voice returned, amused and conversational. "Leaving so soon? How disappointing. It's over. I'm not playing your games anymore." "Games?" The thing's laughter scraped against my skull. "Oh, my dear Shirley, you still don't understand what's been happening, do you?" Pictures rushed through my head, but not the usual visions of potential victims. These were memories, my own memories. But something was wrong with them. Talks with Winter that felt strange, moments with the kids that didn't quite add up, even my research at the library playing back with small changes. You've been such a helpful host, so willing to trust your own thoughts, even when I've been changing them. My legs gave out. I hit the kitchen floor hard, the keys sliding across linoleum as the creature's presence spread through my mind like spilled ink. That touching conversation with your sister about Sky's disappearance. I may have enhanced your responses to seem more natural. Your desperate research into banishment rituals. I guided you toward the most useless sources. Even your noble decision to sacrifice yourself. Well, that's exactly what I wanted you to think. You're lying. Am I? Tell me, when did you last have a conversation with Winter where I wasn't whispering suggestions? When did you last make a decision that didn't serve my purposes? I tried to remember, but the memories felt slippery, unreliable. Had Winter really said those things about the kids missing me? Had Florence actually visited? Or was that another lie? The truth is far more elegant than simple possession. Why consume one mind when I can use it as a beacon to influence dozens? Your presence has been softening the mental defenses of everyone around you for weeks. The kitchen tilted around me as the truth hit. Every person I'd talked to, every family member I'd tried to protect, I'd been putting them in danger instead. Rose Webster has been particularly receptive, such a dedicated teacher, working late into the evening. She's been hearing my whispers for days now. No. Oh yes. Shall I show you? The vision struck hard and sudden. Rose sitting at her desk in the empty elementary school, papers scattered around her as she graded math tests. But her eyes were unfocused, distant, and her lips moved silently as if responding to unheard voices. She's fighting it well, but her resistance weakens each night. Soon she'll be ready for a midnight walk to the marina. I forced myself to stand, grabbing the counter for support. Stay away from her. I'm afraid that's no longer your decision to make. Through the creature's influence, I felt Rose pushing back her chair, collecting her things with robotic precision. Her movements were too smooth, too deliberate, like someone sleepwalking through a well-rehearsed routine. She's leaving the school now. Such a lovely evening for a walk, don't you think? I bolted for the truck, my confession letter forgotten on the table. The engine turned over on the second try, and I tore out of my driveway with gravel flying behind me. The elementary school was only 6 blocks away, but Rose had a head start. This is quite entertaining, racing to save someone while being the very source of their danger. Shut up. You could simply let this happen, one teacher's mind in exchange for ending your torment. Quite reasonable, really. I found Rose 3 blocks from the school, walking down Harbor Street with that same steady rhythm I'd seen in the vision. Her face looked empty, calm, like she was taking a nice evening walk instead of having her mind controlled by some ancient nightmare. I pulled up beside her and rolled down the window. Rose? You okay? She turned toward me, and for a second her eyes cleared. Shirley? What am I doing out here? Interfering again? How tiresome. The confusion disappeared from Rose's face, replaced by that same distant calm. She started walking toward the marina again without saying another word to me. I parked and jogged after her, catching her arm gently. Rose, stop. You need to go home. She looked at me with eyes that weren't quite her own. The water is calling. Can't you hear it? She hears me so clearly now, much more receptive than you ever were. Fight it, I told her, gripping her shoulders. Whatever you're hearing, it's not real. It's beautiful, she whispered, all those voices singing together in the deep. I shook her, harder than I meant to. Rose, listen to my voice. You're a teacher. You have students who need you. This isn't what you want. Something flashed behind her eyes. Confusion, fear, recognition. Shirley? How did I get here? I was grading papers and then... Enough. The mental assault dropped me to my knees, vision going fuzzy as the creature's fury tore through my mind. Rose's eyes went empty again, and she stepped around me, walking toward the marina. You cannot save her. You cannot save any of them. Your very existence spreads my influence like a disease. I pushed myself up, trailing Rose as she moved past the harbor shops and restaurants, all shuttered for the night. A few people eating late at Murphy's looked out through the windows, but nobody seemed to think twice about a woman out for a nighttime walk. Watch how easily they dismiss what they see. My influence makes the unreal seem ordinary. Rose reached the marina entrance and walked past the locked gate like it wasn't there. I tried to follow, but the metal barrier was solid under my hands. She belongs to me now, as do you, as will everyone you've touched with your contaminated presence. What do you want? What I've always wanted. Minds to collect, fear to savor, an endless supply of consciousness to preserve in perfect terror. The creature's satisfaction felt like ice in my veins. But why settle for 5 victims when I can have 50? 100? Your little community will become my garden, tended by willing servants who believe they're making their own choices. Rose had reached the end of the main pier, standing at the edge with her toes hanging over dark water. The ocean gave off a faint glow beneath her, phosphorescent light rising from unimaginable depths. She'll walk into the water now, breathe it in like air until she reaches my domain. And tomorrow, someone else will hear my whispers. Perhaps that old woman who visited you, Perhaps your precious sister. I'll kill myself first. No, you won't. Because now you understand the truth. Your death changes nothing. My influence has already taken root in too many minds. I no longer need you to spread, only to coordinate. The gate's lock snapped under my desperate pulling, metal shrieking as it gave way. I ran down the pier, my footsteps pounding against the wooden planks as Rose lifted one foot over the edge. Rose. She turned at my shout, and for just a second I saw her real self looking back, scared, lost, fighting against something she couldn't figure out. Help me, she whispered. Then her face went empty again, and she stepped forward into nothing. I jumped after her, crashing into the freezing water just as the glowing light got brighter below us. My arms circled Rose's waist, dragging her back up toward the surface as something huge and waiting watched from way down below. How noble. How pointless. We broke through together, Rose gasping and struggling as the creature's grip on her mind shattered. I pulled her toward the pier ladder, both of us coughing up salt water. What happened? She sobbed. I was at school, and then I was drowning, and there were voices. You're okay, I lied, helping her up the ladder. You're safe now. But even as I said it, I could feel the creature's amusement rolling through my thoughts. This was just a taste, a sample of what it could do. Tomorrow there'd be someone else, and the day after that, another victim. You see now why killing yourself would be so pointless. I have dozens of potential servants already weakened by your presence. Your death would merely force me to choose a new primary host. Rose sat shaking on the pier, staring at the water with hollow eyes. There's something down there, something old and hungry. She remembers. How interesting. Usually the experience fades like a dream. We need to get you home, I told Rose, but she grabbed my arm. It's not finished with me, is it? I can still hear it whispering. The creature's laughter bounced around in both our heads at the same time, and Rose's face turned pale with fear. Welcome to my garden, dear teacher. I do hope you'll enjoy your stay. I stared at the diving gear spread across my boat deck. Wetsuit, tank, regulator, weight belt. All borrowed from Pete's shop with a story about checking hull damage. The explosives sat in a waterproof case next to my toolbox, enough C4 to level a city block. Getting it had been simpler than I'd thought. Tommy Reeves still owed me for pulling his boat off the rocks last spring, and his construction crew was tearing down the old Millfield pier. Just need enough to clear some underwater debris, I told him. Insurance company wants it gone before they'll pay out. He'd handed over the charges without asking questions. The letters were sealed in another waterproof container. One for the police explaining everything, one for Winter, one for the kids when they got older. Detective Morrison would think I'd lost my mind, but the evidence would speak for itself when the disappearances stopped. You cannot be serious about this ridiculous plan. The creature's voice had been getting shriller over the past hour, less amused and more genuinely concerned. Good. Let it worry for once. Dead serious. Your crude bombs can't hurt something that's been around since your oceans first came to be. We'll find out. I checked the dive computer one more time. 40 minutes of air, maybe 50 if I stayed calm. More than enough to reach the cavern and light the fuse. The timer would give me 30 seconds to get clear, though I wasn't planning on using them. This is madness. I offer you immortality, power beyond your understanding, and you choose suicide? I choose to stop you. The engine coughed to life, and I cast off the mooring lines, 3 miles out to where the ocean floor dropped into that deep chasm, where this nightmare had started and where it would end. My phone buzzed against the console. Winter's name on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hey, Shirley, where are you?" Her voice was tight with panic. "I found your letter, the one on your kitchen table." My blood went cold. I'd forgotten about the confession letter in my rush to save Rose. "Winter, listen to me. I'm at the marina. I can see your boat heading out." Her voice cracked. "Please come back. We can figure this out together." Through the creature's influence, I felt her standing on the pier, my letter gripped in her trembling hands. She'd taken in everything. About the deal. About Sky. About what was heading for the people I loved. How touching. Shall I show her what awaits her children? Stay away from her. "Shirley? Who are you talking to?" I gripped the wheel tighter, pushing the throttle forward. "Winter, you need to take Kyle and Janet and leave town. Tonight. Drive to Mom's place and don't come back until..." "Until what? Until you kill yourself fighting some sea monster?" Her laugh was bitter, desperate. "Do you hear how crazy that sounds? Tell her the truth. Tell her about the voices she's been hearing in her dreams." The creature was right. I could see it in Winter's face through its shared vision. The dark circles under her eyes, the way she kept looking at the water. It had been whispering to her too. "You've been having dreams," I said quietly. "About drowning. About voices calling from deep water." The quiet dragged on so long I figured she'd hung up. "How did you know that?" "Because it's real. All of it. And it's spreading to everyone I care about. Then we fight it together. Come back, and we'll..." There is no "we" in this. The thing uses me to get to other people. Every minute I'm around you makes it stronger. She could join us willingly. Her mind would be exquisite, seasoned with all that love and worry. The mental image slammed into me, Winter floating in that glowing cavern, her eyes wide with eternal terror while the creature fed on her consciousness. "No. Shirley, please." I hung up and turned off the phone. The GPS showed 2 miles from shore, water depth approaching 300 feet. Almost there. The creature's presence was getting stronger, its voice more demanding. "You think destroying my physical form will end this? I am older than your continents. I have survived ice ages and meteor impacts. Your pathetic explosives are nothing." "Maybe, but they'll sure as hell hurt. I could let you go. Right now. Total freedom. No more whispers, no more visions. All you need to do is turn around." I checked the dive gear one more time. Mask, fins, regulator breathing, smooth and clean. The explosives were strapped to my chest in a waterproof harness. Timer set for 30 seconds once I flipped the switch. Very well. A counteroffer then. The boat shook as something huge moved underneath it. The water around me started to glow, that same eerie light coming up from below. "Bring me one more mind. Just one. Your sister's consciousness would sustain me for decades. Go to hell. I am offering you everything you want. Winter's safety, the children's future, your own freedom. One small sacrifice for the greater good." The GPS beeped. 3 miles out, directly over the chasm. I cut the engine and dropped anchor, though I doubted it would reach bottom in water this deep. She is already infected, you know. My influence grows stronger in her mind each day. Soon she will walk into the ocean, just as the teacher did. Unless nothing. I pulled on the wetsuit, my hand steady while the creature hammered at my thoughts. The weight belt went around my waist, heavy enough to drag me down fast. The explosive harness fit snug against my chest. "You could save her. Bring Winter to me willingly, and I will release everyone else. Your mother, the children, even that meddlesome old woman. All free to live their lives while I feast on one perfect mind. She's not perfect. She's human. And humans don't belong in your collection. The regulator tasted metallic as I bit down on the mouthpiece. 43 minutes of air according to the gauge. The timer on the explosives glowed red, waiting for activation. Last chance, surely. Turn around now, and I will be merciful. I sat on the boat's edge, fins dangling in the bright water. Something massive moved in the depths below, circling like a shark that had caught a scent. See you in hell. I rolled backward into the ocean. The cold hit like a slap, but the wetsuit kept most of it out. I dropped fast, the weight belt dragging me down through layers of glowing light. At 50 feet, the pressure squeezed my chest. At 100, my ears popped even though I'd been equalizing. You cannot reach me. The pressure will crush you long before you find my domain. But it was wrong. Just like before, the water around me changed as I got closer to the creature's territory. I could breathe it somehow, as if the normal laws of physics bent to accommodate its very old presence. At 200 feet, I saw the chasm opening below me like a wound in the ocean floor. The light was brighter here, pulsing with the rhythm of something huge and alive. Turn back. I command you. The mental pressure was crushing, squeezing my skull in a vice, but anger burned hotter than fear, and I kept going down. Kyle's black eye, Janet's flinching, Winter's bruises. Rose standing at the pier's edge with blank, controlled eyes. At 300 feet, I entered the cavern. It was exactly as I remembered, a huge space carved from living rock, filled with thousands of floating bodies preserved in eternal terror. Men, women, children, all suspended in the glowing light while their minds screamed silently. And in the center, the creature itself. I'd never seen its actual form before, only felt it watching. It was stunning and terrifying, part octopus, part jellyfish, part something that no scientist had ever cataloged. Massive tentacles twisted through the water, covered in glowing patterns that made my eyes ache when I tried to focus on them. Its eyes were huge as dinner plates, old and smart, and completely alien. You should not be here. Neither should they. I gestured at the floating victims, my voice somehow carrying through the water. Let them go. They are mine, as you are mine, as your sister will be mine. I lunged for the timer on the explosives. The creature's tentacles whipped out, coiling around my arms and legs with bone-crushing strength. You will not. Watch me. The timer activated with a soft beep, 30 seconds and counting. The creature's fury hit me like a hurricane. It slammed me against the cavern wall, tentacles tightening until I thought my bones would snap. But my finger was already on the switch. I will make your sister's suffering legendary. Centuries of perfect terror, her mind preserved at the moment of greatest anguish. 25 seconds. I'll find your mother, your nephew, every person you've ever cared about. 20. The creature's hold weakened a bit as worry leaked into its mental voice. We can make a deal. Anything you want. Money, control, the power to breathe underwater and live forever. 15. Please. For the first time since this nightmare began, the old terror sounded almost human, almost afraid. 10. I looked up at the thousands of floating victims, their eyes following me with desperate hope. This is for all of them. 5. The creature let me go, its huge body backing away toward the back of the cave. 4. You idiot. You have no clue what you're about to set loose. 3. 2. I closed my eyes and thought about Winter's laugh, Kyle's drawings, Janet reading her favorite books. 1. The explosion turned the world white.